welcome to Australia.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you a little bit of background on what I think you do, and then you can correct me if that's not what you do. So you're a founder of a company called Sounds Profitable.
Yep.
You pitch yourself as sort of a trade media and industry organisation for the podcast industry.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Good. And I love your bio. So you've had over 16 years in the advertising and tech space. That's fine. But the thing that I love that popped out was that you played a key role in the first Shakeable ad in 2009. I think we had the question on Shake Me ads in the State of the Nation study for many, many years. Didn't necessarily move, but it was always there as a standard. So is that your claim to fame?
It was HTML4 that we built it in, so it was before like the animated GIFs would work on mobile even, and we had to build it out frame by frame.
Oh, gosh.
And it was incredibly cool, and I don't even know if it was billable with how few impressions it served. That was back when if you told somebody who worked in mobile, they thought you meant like on taxis, like the ads on top of taxis.
Fantastic. And this is your first trip to Australia.
Yeah.
Though you've been very engaged. From a distance, we can feel you watching, chatting, listening. Our audio councils had you chat to them at times. We love hearing about ourselves, but I'd love you to tell us what you like about the Australian market from what you can see so far. You've been here a week, so you know everything, but also where we may not be as doing as well as we could be, or the things that are happening in other markets.
Yeah, I think the community and organization here is really cool. I think across everything. I think you guys all realize that it's a channel, that you're focusing on growing audio and need to come together and fight for those budgets, so it's less about the individual companies. Seeing the Audio ID, for example, and the companies come together. The idea of the four equivalent companies in the US doing that on stage, I couldn't imagine that happening. And you guys put out a lot of material, a lot of really great things that are easy to cover and that explain it and break it down really easy for people to buy. I think the not great thing is that the only coverage I have about measurement falling short for the last few years comes out of Australia. You're not wrong. I don't think you're wrong at all, but like that EA example, right? Like my first thought on that was the fact that like all the different ways that you can buy it make it incredibly difficult to track in everything, in social media, in YouTube, and everything. It's not unique to podcasting. I think podcasting's big flaw is that we have enough digital signals to hang ourselves. We're better, we have more than broadcast, but less than like pure digital, and so we get stuck in this middle area. And in that chart that was shown earlier, I really think the biggest headache is people bought into these media mix models and these platforms that can aggregate everything. And most of those companies are just not motivated to figure out how podcasting fits in there, or worse, they fit us in ways that are unflattering. And I think that's the movement that we need to see, because I don't think we're going to get more data necessarily from any of the partners out there.
Okay. And it's a tricky one, right? It's a share of spend too, just making sure there's enough revenue, enough spend go into those models. So you sort of see that as a double-edged sword. It's good that we're talking about it, but it could also turn people off in terms of investing if that narrative around difficult to measure is too much.
Yeah. We did this video summit a while back, and we had someone who's leading ad spend at MeUndies there. And it was really great because they walked through how on YouTube they had crazy spend and they buy in big, and it's literally just like the pixel or the URL at the top of the description was enough for them to do measurement, right? No pixel, no anything else there. Not even a vanity URL, I think, or a promo code. It was just the vanity URL. And then I said, okay, cool. I turn everything on Spotify video, or all my podcasts is now not getting pixels that you want in audio. Can you continue spending? And they said no. And I said, why? And I said, we need that pixel data. I said, how do you use it? They're like, we really don't, but it's part of podcasting and we want it because we want to figure out how to use it. And they kind of just laughed. They're like, yeah, everything I said is completely conflicting because it's really the same thing, but it's there to some degree in podcasting, so I expect to use it.
All right. So video seems to be the hot chat in audio. But I'd like to broaden that out. So I'd love your thoughts on really where we're at, where we're going. We've heard a bit already. But also how that changes, I guess, distribution and how we play with distribution players, whether it be Apple, who seem to be a little bit warmer at the moment, YouTube, etc. So where will the video part of audio take us in the audio part of audio, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so my partner, Tom Webster, likes to say that not all podcasts need to have video, but all podcasters have to be on video, and I think that that's really strong. I think there's a lot of pressure, and sure, the algorithm and everything like that are great, but the pure video aspect of it, consumption is down compared to the consumption of pure audio. So there are a lot of reasons to be a holdout on that, but if I said to all of you guys, hey, I have my favorite podcast, I'm gonna play the 2-minute long trailer, and I just grab my phone, and I put it in the microphone, and I stared at all of you for 2 minutes, that sucks. Like, it's real awful. But if I say, hey, I'm gonna send you this trailer, and you're like, yeah, whatever, I'll put it at 4x speed, and it's a visual, right? You can get what I mean out of it. I watched the first episode of Game of Thrones forever ago when it came out, and I was like, I understand that, and then read all the books, and then caught up with the visuals, right? Or like the TV show. Yep. I think that sometimes that visual is just enough to hook and be like, oh, I do want to give it more time. I do want to buy into it. So we need to think about it as both a marketing tool and taking advantage of those other places, but not abandon those places where someone can like literally buy in. Like, I'm traveling and I did not buy a local SIM or anything like that. So when I hit Wi-Fi and it downloads my podcast and I'm walking around, I'm listening to something. I'm not going to sit there and watch it. I'm not going to pull it out. And it's been a big part of my entertainment on this trip.
So for the podcasters who've been around for a long time, like, often they're really good talent naturally, but do you see there'll need to be an upskilling in those sort of visual arts, in how to storytell in a different way?
I think that right now it feels like podcasting is in its reality TV era. Like, there was that fear back with Hollywood and everything where everything was going to go reality TV and unscripted, and it lasted probably longer than it needed to, and it still held on, but it didn't, that's not all that we consume. And so I think that for some people, we're going to find new people pop up. Maybe they stay forever. We're going to find people who hit their stride, like people who are literally YouTubers that are just like, well, I fit the definition of podcast. I'll just rename myself now into a podcast, and now I get prominent placement and have an opportunity to grow up there. It's going to be interesting to see what it is when you do scripted or whatnot. LA Times, for example, has like their journalists read in a really nice recording room, and then when it's more than the journalists, they have like a cool waveform and all the different things there. I think people need to experiment. I think that the audience, like, what's the worst that happens? Like, as long as you don't spend enough money that you're putting yourself in trouble. If someone's just like, wow, that video sucks, you just turn it off and listen to it, right? Like, you can just minimize the tab and still get what you need out of it.
On the reality side of things, you're obviously not across maths in Australia. We're still huge reality TV people. We haven't left that. On that talent, on the video and the different formats, whether it's video, audio, in terms of ad versus subscription, what does that do to that model? Because, it gets trickier, it's across more places, but possibly consumers can understand the value for they're used to paying for streaming.
Yeah, I think the laziest thing we can do around subscription is to call it ad-free. I mean, even YouTube and Spotify use the language that it's, like dynamic ad-free is a lot of what they're focusing on there. So it means that when you pay for a Spotify subscription or YouTube subscription, the ads that they insert aren't there, but the ads that the host inserts are still there. I think that if the ads are done with integration with the host, then it's content, right? Like, I think if you do it with care and all that, and I think that stuff should be left in, subscription or not, and even further into it, right, for the subscription. This subscription brought to you in support by EA, and I'm just gonna continue calling on you guys because you're right there. But I think that those opportunities are really valuable in that, and so the initial push that just for a podcaster to say like, hey, if you hate the ads coming up next, you should subscribe, that hurts the ads that are coming on there. Yeah. And then the subscription, you kind of build yourself into a hole. But I think podcasting gave creators the permission to go ask their audiences one more time, hey, would you like to subscribe directly to me? Not through a big plan, not through like an organization, like one-on-one. And I think it worked this time. Like, I think we're seeing a lot of buy-in for it.
Yeah, and it feels like that sort of in-life experience too is now, for those who are rest of history listeners, like the hype around their festival is huge, right? So that community piece, so I guess that subscriber area is stretching into the real world and community a bit more.
Yeah, the live event aspect of it is really neat. We're seeing, the ability to buy the virtual tickets for the live, which, sometimes we have to take ourselves out of it. Like, I'm not personally interested in being in a Discord for a podcast that I follow. I can barely keep up with my emails. I don't need to be in a live chat room. So, being able to see a live version of it versus listen to it, I'd rather listen to it. But I'm happy to support it because it means that they can do it. Me and my son, we live in Portland, Oregon in the US. We flew across the country to Boston, Massachusetts to go see Greeking Out live. And it was astounding. It was such a killer experience, and it was worth every aspect of that trip. And he got to meet these people that he's been spending hours with every day. And it's
Sorry, what is Greeking Out?
Greeking Out is a kids show. By the way, my kids who are 4 and 7, they listen to a lot of ABC Kids Listen. So like, you guys have some killer content over here. But Greeking Out is a kids show through National Geographic with Disney that is, I think, 12 seasons long. And my 7-year-old can tell you everything about Greek mythology right now.
Fantastic, I love that. You run a lot of events, you bring a lot of people together. I'd love you to tell me from a community and engagement point of view, both on the creative side, podcaster side, but the advertiser and the brands. Is there a new wave of people coming in? What are you seeing in terms of trends of new type of content or new types of advertisers getting engaged?
All the economic changes that led to, lending and the available free credit, so to speak, have made a lot of the direct response advertisers kind of change course, a lot less of them spinning up, a lot easier or a lot harder to do some of that stuff. But I think that slowed down for a bit. It might not be at the pace of expansion that we saw during COVID, but I think that we're seeing more and more of them. I'm hearing more new advertiser names, and it's really interesting on that end, because I think that what we're seeing is these brands, when they pop into podcasting, either it's because an agency pulled them in, and that's been really fun. We have a lot of major podcast agencies, very focused on podcast agencies in the US that are doing really great things. But even more so, it's these brands that are smaller, and they bring on someone who's younger, and they just say, look, I love podcasting, and if you're gonna have me do all of this, like, you gotta trust me and let me try that. And buying into those people I think has really rewarded them well. And so I'm meeting a lot of younger people in the brand space that it might be their first or second role. They're in-house for that. They might only handle podcasts, or they might have considered to put all the budget there. But they're not huge budgets, at least by US standards, I think, but they could be.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that trend, that sort of DTC trend that was there, come back. Social and search is big. Same thing in terms of in-house or agency. Performance directors seem to be sort of growing their kingdoms. And you imagine, like, podcasting would have to be part of that direct response piece, adding on to where they've tapped out with social and search.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think some of the smaller brands are bringing people in who are leading it and from the get-go as they're scaling everything for that brand. But there are, I think, a good number of brands that are mid-sized to even larger that podcasting is the only thing that they do outsource. And so they'll still handle everything else. And it's just because they have all this methodology that they bought into, whether right or wrong, it just doesn't mesh. And so they don't want it all on their own head. Yep. On why it didn't work, or why they can't explain the connection.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we are a smaller market, as you know, and there's, I guess, not always, I'm looking at Andy's up there, who is a specialist sort of podcast agency, but there's not as much of that, so we probably have to approach things slightly different in this market. I'm going to open up to the floor while we've got Brian in town to pick his brain. If we have any questions. Henrik. Wait a sec, Jen's coming up. Henrik from Acast. Yeah, you know Henrik?
We're grabbing lunch.
I'm so scared from Steve telling us to stand up. Hey, welcome to Australia.
Thanks for having me.
What do you think is holding the industry back the most from an ad expenditure perspective? And you can't go with the measurement card.
Oh, no, yeah. Two things. One, I think that we need to remember we're asking a lot of an ad buyer. Right? Like, raise your hand if you know anybody who spent $100,000 on a channel, tried it out, got 10x return, and is now the CMO of that company. I don't have an example. I know plenty of people who've tanked their role and started looking for a new job when they blew $25,000 to $50,000 and couldn't explain it to their boss. So I think we need to be a little bit a little bit more understanding. And I think generally podcasting is. I mean, I think that the trick of podcasting is we've explained ourselves about 50 times. And now when people are like, tell me what we can do in podcasting, we're just excited. We're excited that we're getting that buy-in, and it feels like we have it this year. So be understanding of the buyers and the pressure that it's putting onto them, because it doesn't slot in like everything else, and it is putting their job at risk a little bit. And then the other thing is sales training. And again, you know, Gay's asked me not to flatter you guys too much, but like, here's the truth.
Go for it. Just go.
In the US, I feel like there might be 10 ad sellers. And I think that the rest of the people with sales titles in podcasting might be inbound account managers. And I think that that's tough. And I think that we don't train a lot of people the right way. I think we hit the ground running, and you just, here's the book of business to call, here's everything to do on that end. And we don't spend enough time training and educating in the US on anything. And so I think that that's a real difficult thing, because I've sat into some sales meetings here, which was really great. I've been like, wow, nobody in the US, even the strong sellers, wouldn't say that out loud. And it's just like, let's just get it over with, let's move to the fun parts, but you got to hear this part. And I really appreciate that here. So I think that the level of mentorship and education that you guys have on the sales side is something that you shouldn't take for granted. And if you are in sales, you should be looking for someone senior that you can learn as much as possible from.
Thank you.
And the reason I said not to flatter us too much, I will explain myself there, is I think we can always be better. So I don't want us to be complacent, because we are the best, so we can keep being better. So that was my thinking.
But then take over the world. I mean, lead these things, the audio ID and all of these things, like push and pressure people. Half the cool things that you guys do, like some of the stuff with like the Triton Ranker and stuff, I'm learning in the US, we call that collusion, which, you know, collusion sounds really cool to me, to have everything unified, but apparently in the United States, that's illegal. Weird, right? That's a fun sentence to say out loud.
We have lawyers in the room, don't worry.
But there's, you guys are just, you're all getting together and you're solving these problems, and you're hearing a complaint and you're coming together to solve it. You're not fracturing it and trying to be like, hey, come over here and I'll do that for you. You're saying like, hey, if the dollar comes in here, it's going to eventually get to everyone, and it needs to for this to grow. And that's cool. So I don't think you'll rest on that end, but I do think that like, hit your stride and start telling people outside of Australia on what they can learn from you guys, and let's start getting you guys more visible globally.
Well, hopefully you will do that through your channels.
You're covered. We covered the report today in the newsletter. Just I got the notification, it came out.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us, Brian. You'll be in Melbourne
Thanks for having me.
tomorrow.
Yep.